Good morning students and welcome to your English class. Today's class is in continuation with our previous class. We will continue with part 2 of lesson number 10, My Dearest Lizzie. So without wasting any time further, let's start our today's class.
If we make haste, said Lydia, as they walked along, perhaps we may see something of Captain Carter before he goes. In Meryton, they parted. The two youngest repaired to the lodgings of one of the officers' wives, and Elizabeth continued her walk alone. Crossing field after field at a quick pace, jumping over stiles and springing over puddles with impatient activity, and finding herself at last within the view of the house with weary ankles, dirty stockings, and a face glowing with the warmth of exercise. Now, the three Bennet sisters, that is, Elizabeth, Catherine, and Lydia, have left and they are now on their way. Now, from Meryton, Elizabeth continued her walk alone, jumping over stiles and springing in the puddles. Students, puddles are small pools that are formed on the ground, especially after rains. And now she finally arrives at Netherfield with weary ankles, dirty stockings, and a face that was glowing with the warmth of exercise. Now, what was that exercise? The exercise was of her traveling all alone, barefooted to Netherfield. Now, she was shown into the breakfast parlour where all but Jane were assembled and where her appearance created a great deal of surprise. That she should have walked 3 miles so early in the day in such dirty weather and by herself was almost incredible to Mrs. Hurst and Mrs. Bingley, and Elizabeth was convinced that they held her in contempt for it. She was received, however, very politely by them, and in their brother's manners there was something better than politeness. There was good humour and kindness. Mr. Darcy said very little, and Mr. Hurst nothing at all. The former was divided between admiration of the brilliancy which exercise had given to her complexion and doubt as to the occasions justifying her coming so far alone. The latter was thinking only of his breakfast. So now, when Elizabeth reached Netherfield, she was sent into the room where everyone was sitting except Jane. They were all sitting in their dining room waiting for their breakfast. Her appearance created a great surprise in the minds of everyone sitting over there. Elizabeth's walking alone for 3 miles, and that too so early in the day and in such a dirty weather, shocked Mrs. Hurst and Miss Bingley, and somewhere Elizabeth was convinced that they held her in contempt for it. However, she was received very politely by them, and in addition, Charles Bingley's behavior towards her was something more than mere politeness. It was good humor, it was kindness, and everything good. Mr. Darcy talked very less, while Mr. Hurst did not say anything at all. Darcy was basically confused between two things. Firstly, he was admiring the glow or the brilliancy which her exercise had given to her, and secondly, he was thinking about the need for her to come alone this far. He could not help but admire her efforts, but Mr. Hurst was silently sitting there and thinking about his breakfast and did not say anything at all. Her inquiries after her sister were not favorably answered. Miss Bennet had slept ill, and though Up was very feverish and not well enough to leave her room. Elizabeth was glad to be taken to her immediately, and Jade, who had only been withheld by the fear of giving alarm or inconvenience from expressing in her note how much she longed for such a visit, she was delighted at her entrance. She was not equal, however, to much conversation, and when Miss Bingley left them together, could attempt little besides expressions of gratitude for the extraordinary kindness she was treated with. Elizabeth attended to her silently. Now, students, when Elizabeth asked about the well being of her sister, her questions were not answered favorably. As per her, they were not answered favorably, and all that they told her about her sister was that Jane wasn't feeling too well or she had a fever. That's why she was unable to come out of her room. So Elizabeth was frustrated for some time, but she felt glad and relieved as she was immediately taken to her sister. Jane was delighted to see Elizabeth as she was longing for that affection, even though she had already told her family members not to worry about her. But still, she wanted someone from her own family to come and meet her. Initially, Jane could not say much, but when Miss Bingley left the two sisters together, Jane could attempt a little, and she expressed her gratefulness towards this kind gesture of Elizabeth. Now, when the breakfast was over, they were joined by the sisters, and Elizabeth began to like them herself when she saw how much affection and solicitude they showed for Jane. Now, when the breakfast was over, Jane and Elizabeth were joined by the Bingley sisters, and now even Elizabeth also started liking the sisters of Mr. Bingley after she realized the affection of the sisters for Jane. Initially, Elizabeth did not like the Bingley sisters, but after seeing the way they cared about her sister when she was ill, she also started liking them. So now the apothecary came and, having examined his patient, said, as might be supposed, that she had caught a violent cold, and that they must endeavour to get the better of it, advised her to return to bed, and promised her some draughts. The advice was followed readily, for the feverish symptoms increased, and her head ached acutely. Elizabeth did not quit her room for a moment, nor were the other ladies often absent. The gentlemen being out, they had, in fact, nothing to do elsewhere. So now, students, an apothecary came, but first of all, let me tell you, apothecary is a person who makes and sells medicine. He is not exactly a doctor. In modern days, chemists or pharmacists have taken over this role. So when this person came, this apothecary came, and he examined Jane, he said that she has caught a violent cold, and he advises her to take proper rest and take some medicinal drinks, that is, draughts. The advice given by the apothecary were carried out religiously and readily, as the feverish symptoms were increasing and even her head ached acutely. So now Elizabeth and Bingley's sisters were taking very good care of her. They did not leave Jane's side and were present there in that room to attend her and take care of her. The men, they were supposed to be out, but they did not have anything to do, and they were just waiting outside. When the clock struck 3, Elizabeth felt that she must go, and very unwillingly said so. Miss Bingley offered her the carriage, and she only wanted a little pressing to accept it. when Jane testified such concern in parting with her that Miss Bingley was obliged to convert the offer of the chaise to an invitation to remain at Netherfield for the present. Elizabeth most thankfully consented, and a servant was dispatched to Longbourn to acquaint the family with her stay and bring back a supply of the clothes. So now, when it was 3 o'clock, Elizabeth felt that she should leave, and she said so very unwillingly. Why? Because she did not want to leave her sister in this condition. So, when she told her decision, Miss Bingley offered her a carriage and she accepted it. But when Jane showed that she wasn't happy with Elizabeth leaving, at this Miss Bingley gave an invitation to Elizabeth to stay in Netherfield with her sister. Elizabeth very thankfully and very gratefully accepted the invitation, and then a servant was sent to Longbourn to inform the family members about Elizabeth's stay in Netherfield and bring back her supply of clothes.